then you would have a grand fire trine. And this is a very positive aspect pattern in astrology, which essentially means that you are every type of fire. You have the fire superpower, the fire gift. So people with a grand fire trine tend to be very strong leaders. They tend to have lots of energy, lots of drive, lots of passion. They are just the fiery, brightest people. You can imagine like a circle of fire that just feeds itself and feeds on itself. And it's just this fire flowing in this continual way. Welcome. My name is Aleena, and you are listening to Prometheus Astrology. Today, I'm talking to you about the elements in astrology. There are 4 different elements: earth, water, fire, and air, and each of the zodiac signs is one of these 4 elements. This is a part of a series I'm doing. We're going to focus on fire today, but I will go through each of these elements in due time. And what I'm doing is kind of laying the foundation of my astrological philosophy and understanding. So I've gone through each of the planets, and I have gone through each of the quadruplicities and genders, and now I'm going through the elements, and then I will go through the houses and the zodiac signs and just make my way through each of these foundational concepts. So as I get into more complex things, you can refer back to some of these more fundamental key learnings in case you missed something. So the elements. This is a concept that is existing in lots of different philosophical schools of thought and learning systems. You'll find elements in yoga and tarot and Chinese medicine and many other places. So much of the symbolism of the elements can be crossed with many of these different systems. And it's interesting that there's similar understandings that even people in different cultures seem to have about these different qualities. So we are starting with fire because Aries is a fire sign, and that is the very first zodiac sign in the zodiac. Always start with Aries. Aries is the beginning. So fire, what is the quality of fire in astrology? It has to do with passion, bravery, boldness, assertiveness, expression. Could be physical energy or sexual energy, integrity. And on the shadow side, can tend towards anger or aggression or rashness or impatience. There's 2 sides to every coin. Every element, every sign, every symbol has both positive and negative manifestations. So these are some examples of those for fire in general. And it's really good and interesting to understand these core archetypal symbolic meanings, because then we can start to make meaning out of astrology and different things without just relying on our personal subjective experience. So for instance, if you meet a lot of Sagittarius people, have a lot of Sagittarius people in your life, you might come to think of what Sagittarius means based on your personal experience with these Sagittarius people. Maybe they have lots of Sagittarius suns. But I think it's important that we shy away from just kind of stereotyping the signs based off of our personal experiences, and that it's more important to be able to relate the qualities that they share in common to these core symbolic underpinnings of the signs. So rather than be like, all Aries people are so aggressive, oh my God, I can't stand them, we can think the quality of fire is strong with them. I see the fire in them. Maybe they haven't learned to control their fire yet. Because it will be important to develop the opposite elemental energy or opposite zodiac energy to kind of integrate and develop as a human, psychologically. Not that you necessarily need to use astrology as your framework for doing that, but it's important to, in general, just recognize what our tendencies are and be able to balance that out and understand the opposite end of the polarity that you exist on. So that way we can be more choiceful and autonomous with how we move through our lives. And also to understand people who are different from us. So maybe you don't have any fire in you, and maybe that makes it something that you don't really enjoy encountering in other people or something. Or maybe you really do enjoy encountering it in other people because it's something you don't have as much of. But either way, it's very helpful to be able to understand people who are different from you, to avoid judging or jumping to conclusions or ending up inadvertently just living in a smaller world. We always want to be growing and understanding more. So fire, the fire signs, starting with Aries. What is it about Aries that is fire? Aries is also ruled by Mars, which is the planet of war, aggression, violence, anger, energy, a very fiery planet, literally the red planet. And Aries is also cardinal, which is initiating the beginning of a season type of stuff. So each element has both a cardinal, fixed, and mutable version of it. So Aries is cardinal fire, and then Leo is fixed fire, and Sagittarius is mutable fire. So as the cardinal version of fire, I think of this as like a gun or something, moving energy forward, blasting in a focused directional way, firepower. So I think Aries is probably the most exaggerated version of fire in the zodiac. Fire is already the warrior, and so is Mars, and fire enjoys moving forward. Fire is also physical energy, and Aries tends to have a lot of physical energy, especially Aries moon people have lots of that physical body energy or even sexual energy. Aries also tends to have a lot of bold, brave qualities to them, and if it's your sun, this might be more ideologically. If it's your Mercury, maybe it's how you communicate, and the way that you speak might be more kind of aggressive or just assertive or something like that. Aries can, on the shadow side, sometimes tend towards anger or aggression or impatience, but they tend to have a lot of passion and energy to whatever it is that they are engaging with. And sometimes this is beautiful, and sometimes this can be a bit misplaced. And then Leo is fixed fire. So I think of fixed fire as like a flame, a candle. And Leo, as a sign ruled by the sun, tends to have lots of integrity. And they do have this strong leadership quality as well. Fire is also very strong with leadership. And Leo is not afraid to express themselves or to be seen. Leo is quite brave in this way and really enjoys shining their light and being the spotlight, and will bring energy to a situation or a group. They also tend to be very heartfelt and just have lots of integrity for the self. They tend to have strong values that they adhere to with great integrity. Leo is the king. On the shadow side, Leo can be a bit vain, maybe a little bit too absorbed in the self and self-expression and shining their own light, and kind of miss out on the light of other people, or might be overly concerned with their own light in a way that can be unbalanced. Although that's also a beautiful thing in the right situation. And then Sagittarius, mutable fire. Mutable fire is like, I think of a forest fire spreading. And Sagittarius, in this way, tends to really have strong ideas or beliefs that they're passionate about, as a sign that's also ruled by Jupiter, so more oriented towards philosophy and religion and authority in this way. So usually Sagittarius will have some kind of political or religious or philosophical belief or ideology that they are quite passionate about, and as mutable fire, like to spread the gospel of whatever it is that they believe in. They also like to physically get around. They have a lot of joy and optimism and energy that they enjoy spreading about. They are often the life of the party and tend to just be pretty joyous, jubilant people. On the shadow side, again, sometimes fire can be a little bit overly preoccupied with your own energy, which for Sagittarius can be related to, again, this ideology, so maybe a little bit evangelicalizing sometimes. And with the mutable fire can be a little bit here and there and everywhere, which can sometimes be a challenge when situations or people require stability or kind of groundedness. Another important thing to mention about the elements is that signs that share the same element are trine to each other. So elements repeat every 4 times, right? We go fire, earth, air, water, fire, earth, air, water, fire, earth, air, water. And when you come through a circle in this way, you'll find that there are 3 of each element, and it divides the circle in 3, so that kind of creates a triangle. And so the reason that the trine exists, or the way that ancient astrologers conceptualized the aspects, was that to aspect literally translates in the etymology to witness. And so they considered these signs to be able to see each other. And the reason they are able to see and observe and connect with each other is because they share a quality. So each of the aspects indicates that these planets or signs or whatever it is share some quality if you're using a whole sign system, which I do because I'm a Hellenistic astrologer. So therefore, signs that are square to each other share the same quadruplicity, signs that are opposite share the same gender and quadruplicity, signs that are sextile share the same gender, and signs that are trine share the same element. And so this is the most harmonious aspect of all the aspects. So when signs share the same element, they're really able to see and relate and understand each other. It's easy for an earth sign to recognize and connect with and enjoy the similarities between another earth sign, for instance. And if you have all three modalities of the same element present in your chart, if you have, for instance, fixed fire, mutable fire, and cardinal fire, you have Aries, Sagittarius, and Leo all in your chart, then you would have a grand fire trine. And this is a very positive aspect pattern in astrology, which essentially means that you are every type of fire. You have the fire superpower, the fire gift. So people with a grand fire trine tend to be very strong leaders. They tend to have lots of energy, lots of drive, lots of passion. They are just the fiery, brightest people. And the shadow side of this can be burning the candle at both ends, sort of burning yourself out. You can imagine like a circle of fire that just feeds itself and feeds on itself. And it's just this fire flowing in this continual way. So that can be a little exhausting sometimes for these people. But it is a superpower and a gift, and specifically the gift of bravery, of leadership, of boldness, of energy, of passion. These people are meant to be seen. And this is especially true if the grand fire trine is between personal planets. So if one of these chart components is Neptune, Uranus, or Pluto, that does not tend to really show up as much because those placements are not really as personal to you or your personality. It's more collective. I would also say that I would not count chart points. I would count the ascendant as one, but not the MC, the IC, the descendant, the lot of fortune, not the nodes. I also would not count the comets here. I would just count the personal planets personally and the ascendant because I'm a traditional astrologer. Although maybe you'll feel it in some way, but just the most exaggerated way that you will definitely feel and recognize if I'm talking to you, you will definitely feel and resonate with this if the grand fire trine is between personal planets and or the ascendant. Anything else I can't vouch for. So I think that's all that I'll say about the fire signs today. There's more that could be said, and I will go into more depth on each sign when I get to the Zodiac series, but I think that's pretty good for just the fire nature of each of the fire signs. If you have a lot of fire energy in your chart, I would love to hear about that. If there's some quality of fire that you think that I missed, or if you don't have any fire, I would also be curious to see how you relate to this as well. So feel free to leave me a comment. I will respond. You might also subscribe to support my work or follow me on Instagram at Promethea_astrology. You could also book a reading with me. I would love to talk to you about your birth chart. I offer 60 and 90-minute consultations. 60 is a birth chart reading where we get into the birth chart as a symbol of who you are, strengths and weaknesses. We could dive into particular areas of life of interest to you, finances, parents, relationships, career, things like that. And in the 90-minute reading, we will also get into your timing. So talking about the future, what you have coming up, what cycle you're in right now, when you could expect it to shift. Also can map things like career peaks and when you might experience certain turning points in your life. So you can head to my website, www.promethea.design/ to book a reading with me if you
Astrology.
like. Also linked below, of course, in my description. And if you live in Philadelphia, then know that I teach workshops in person. I love connecting in real life in groups of people over astrology. I find it to be just the most fulfilling and stimulating way to spend an afternoon. So if you would like to connect in person, I do that too. Thank you so much for being here.